Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Kabul claims the Taliban have offered a 3-month ceasefire in exchange for prisoners to be released. The government says the insurgents also asked for the removal of their leaders from a United Nations blacklist. In a briefing, Kabul's negotiator Nadir Nadri termed the proposal a big demand. In Pakistan, 2 troops have been martyred as terrorists carried out an IED attack in Balochistan's Pasni district. In a statement, the military's media wing said a search operation is underway to apprehend the perpetrators. On the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Forum in Dushanbe, the meeting between Chinese and Indian foreign ministers has ended without any breakthrough over border tensions. Chinese State Councillor Wang Yi said Beijing is not responsible for the tussle in the Ladakh region, and Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar said the unilateral change of status quo at the border is not acceptable. Brazil's daily COVID-19 tallies have plummeted at a worrying point. The Latin American country registered more than 1,500 deaths and over 57,000 cases in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, Argentina has become the 5th country in Latin America to surpass 100,000 deaths. Pakistan has logged its highest daily cases in more than a month, with over 2,500 new infections and 47 deaths. While globally, the coronavirus caseload has surpassed 188 million, while the death count is over 4 million. Well, these were the top stories. News in detail after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We'll start from Pakistan, where 2 troops have been martyred as terrorists carried out an IED attack in Balochistan's Pasni district. In a statement, the military's media wing said a search operation is underway to apprehend the perpetrators. Pakistan Army said such cowardly acts cannot sabotage the hard-earned peace and prosperity in Balochistan. It noted inimical elements carry out these attacks backed by hostile intelligence agencies. The army said security forces are determined to neutralize such nefarious designs at all costs. Meanwhile, the Afghan government claims the Taliban have offered a 3-month ceasefire in exchange for prisoners to be released. The government says the insurgents also asked for the removal of their leaders from a United Nations blacklist. In a press briefing, Kabul's negotiator Nadir Nadri termed the proposal a big demand. The Taliban have not commented on this statement yet, but earlier the group welcomed the British Defence Secretary's remarks that London will work with the Taliban should they come to power. In a tweet, spokesperson Suhail Shaheen said the Taliban are committed to international principles and will not allow Afghan soil to be used against any country. Meanwhile, a high-powered Afghan government delegation is set to resume talks with the Taliban in Doha. The delegation includes the head of Afghanistan's Reconciliation Council, Abdullah Abdullah, and former President Hamid Karzai. Pakistan's information minister said Islamabad will also host an Afghan peace conference. Prime Minister Imran Khan held a telephonic conversation with former Afghan President Hamid Karzai. Now, for more on this, we have with us Ina Tangent from Beijing. Thank you, Ina, for your time now. Now, the regional countries around Afghanistan seem to be taking the lead in brokering peace, with Russia, China and Pakistan offering facilitation. Does that mean the United States-led effort has completely failed and become irrelevant?
Well, it's failed and become irrelevant, but remember, the United States broke Afghanistan. It's now leaving the cleanup to the regional players. It's a highly unstable situation. The U.S. has invested $2 trillion directly and will cost in total about $4 trillion. So walking away is defeat. But strategically, there are people in Washington who are saying we're going to put this mess on Russia, China, Pakistan, and all the rest of the surrounding neighbors' plate. So right now it has become a regional issue, and it's going to have to be settled that way.
Right, now also tell us, why has former President Hamid Karzai sprung into a leading role all of a sudden after staying in the shadows for a good while?
Well, quite frankly, they were uncertain about what was going to happen in terms of the actual timing. But now, as it becomes clear that the Taliban, or the collection of entities known as the Taliban, are closing in, I think he is trying to figure out some way in which he can plead the case, not only for himself, but also for the rest of his administration. Otherwise, there's a oncoming bloodbath that could occur.
Right, lastly, Pakistan already houses over 3 million Afghan refugees. More are spilling over into Tajikistan amid the ongoing fighting there. Should the UN not be proactively handling the refugee situation instead of being a reactionary body?
Well, what the United Nations should be doing and what they're actually doing is being hamstrung by players, especially the United States, who is not interested in doing anything more on this particular issue. As I said, they are strategically happy that they have left their mess on everyone else's plates. Getting the United Nations involved is not going to be on the top of their priority right now. Biden is interested in the upcoming elections next year, so he can get enough traction and votes for his domestic agenda. The international agenda, what happens to the Afghan people, what happens to the area, whether or not this spins out of control, it seemingly is not any concern of his administration.
All right, let's only hope for the best. In our tangent, political analyst from Beijing, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. Now, moving on, the US says Iran has requested time until their presidential transition to return to the Vienna talks. The State Department says Washington is interested in a mutual return to the 2015 nuclear deal. A State Department spokesperson warned that the offer will not be on the table indefinitely. This comes amid reports that Iran is not prepared to resume talks until President-elect Ibrahim Raisi's administration inaugurates. Earlier, the State Department said Washington is allowing Tehran to use funds frozen in South Korea and Japan to settle debts. It said Secretary of State Antony Blinken signed an earlier waiver and has extended it for 90 days. Now, the department also made it clear that the waiver does not allow for the transfer of any funds to Iran. South Korea and Japan hold billions of dollars in assets from Iran that have been stuck due to US sanctions. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Hamid Raza Ghulamzadeh from Tehran. Thank you very much for your time, Hamid Raza. Now, Hamid Raza, how is the new administration in Tehran different from President Rouhani's government, and how can it impact the Vienna talks?
Regarding the Vienna talks, the foreign policy of the country is not going to drastically change by the change of the government, because it is usually decided in Supreme National Security Council, and that is a body, an entity formed by the government and some other individuals and other officials from different parts of the branches of power, like Parliament and the others. And it's not going to change drastically regarding the strategy and the goals of the foreign policy. But of course, the tactics can change from one government to the other one, and the negotiation teams can change, and each negotiator and each diplomat might have his or her own points of views and strategies and let's say methods of discussing the issues. But anyway, it doesn't seem that it's going to be much change from the Iranian side.
Right. Hamid Raza, also at the end of the sixth round, negotiators from both sides said they were returning home for the final deliberations. Would the next round be make or break, or should we expect another protracted dialogue.
Iranian Foreign Ministry released we can say its final report on the JCPOA to the parliament just a few days ago. And based on that, which talks about the conditions discussed in Vienna, it doesn't seem that to be a practical and signable deal in Vienna. Because Iran had said that, the leader here in Iran had said that all the sanctions need to be lifted. But what we are seeing in the deal is that the Americans are talking about keeping hundreds of sanction designations in place, first of all. And second of all, they are not lifting the sanctions. They are not even stopping the sanctions. They are just stopping implementing some of the sanctions. They are still in place, but they say that we are not going to implement them. There are some sanctions like the visa or CASA in the Congress, and then the Americans are not going to negate them, or they are not going to stop them. They're just trying to have some measures to circumvent them. So it's not lifting the sanctions. It is not something that Iranian side can accept. That is the discussions actually here in Iran on this side of the deal.
Hamid Raza Ghulamzadeh, foreign policy analyst, thank you very much for your time on Indus News. Now, moving on to other stories. On the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Forum in Dushanbe, the meeting between Chinese and Indian foreign ministers has ended without any breakthrough over border tensions. Chinese State Councillor Wang Yi said Beijing is not responsible for the tussle in the Ladakh region. He pointed out that China-India ties are still hovering at a low point. Meanwhile, Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar said a unilateral change of the status quo at the border is not acceptable. He said the friction remains unresolved and prolonging the dispute is negatively impacting ties. At least 20 Indian soldiers, including a colonel, were killed last year trying to claim an area on the line of actual control. Thousands of soldiers have been in a standoff ever since, as multiple rounds of talks continue to fail. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Israel has demolished 11 Palestinian houses in the Bedouin community of the Al-Kabun in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian media said soldiers also seized tractors, water tankers and solar power units belonging to the community. Meanwhile, in a village near East Jerusalem, Israeli soldiers demolished a barn and handed demolition orders to 2 others. While illegal Israeli settlers shot a Palestinian shepherd near Madama village, south of the Nablus city. Colonial settlers also cut 150 Palestinian-owned olive trees in Burin village. Now, the South African government says it is planning to increase tenfold the number of soldiers deployed to curb the ongoing violence. Defence Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Ngakula says the government has requested the placement of 25,000 troops. She said the troops will be positioned in the hot spots of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng provinces. Meanwhile, the Mines and Energy Ministry has urged people not to panic, buy and hoard fuel. The country's biggest refinery in Durban has temporarily shut down, and the movement of petroleum products is disrupted by the unrest. Now, in a statement, the ministry said it has issued regulations prohibiting the sale of petrol and diesel into containers. Around 72 people have been killed and over 1,200 arrested since protests started against former President Jacob Zuma's arrest. Now, Brazil's daily COVID-19 tallies have plummeted at a worrying point. The Latin American country registered more than 1,500 deaths and over 57,000 cases in the last 24 hours. While globally, the coronavirus caseload has surpassed 188 million, while the death count is over 4 million. More details about the pandemic in this report.
As the Delta virus sweeps the world, even the countries with the most successful vaccine drives are witnessing a surge in new cases. The infections curve in the United States is rising again due to the fast-spreading variant, lagging vaccinations and July 4th gatherings. In Latin America, the devastation continues, with a strain being discovered in Mexico as well. Meanwhile, Argentina has become the 5th country in the region to surpass 100,000 deaths.
It's not just the pandemic drowning us in this country. There is also this huge economic crisis. Many relatives call us crying, not only because of the death, but because they don't have the money to be able to give a burial as a person deserves. We place ourselves in their shoes and we have to act as psychologists to these people.
Over in France, clashes between protesters and police have resurfaced over fresh restrictions. This comes just a day after Amnesty International accused Greece of using the pandemic as an excuse for banning protests. Meanwhile, thousands again took to the streets in Athens to protest the mandatory vaccination rule for workers. Spain has also announced new restrictions to control the latest surges propelled by the Delta variant.
I begin by analyzing the epidemiological situation. The ascending tendency that we warned over last week is still going on. Infections rising from 225 cases per 100,000 people in the last 14 days to 469 cases recorded today.
The World Health Organization has warned that the Delta variant and low vaccine availability make surging cases in the Middle East potentially catastrophic. Meanwhile, in Tunisia and Myanmar, oxygen shortages amid severe outbreaks and overstretched healthcare systems have created a serious crisis.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported more than 2,500 COVID-19 cases overnight, the highest tally in over a month. This has pushed the caseload over 981,000. The Health Ministry has recorded 47 new deaths in the last 24 hours. The death toll has crossed 22,600. Officials said more than 2,300 infected people are in critical condition, while more than 916,000 have recovered from the disease so far. The ministry data shows that more than 21 million vaccine doses have been administered so far, and over 4.2 million people have been fully vaccinated. China has confirmed one case of human infection with the H5N6 strain of bird flu in Sichuan province. State media said the 55-year-old male in Bazong city has been hospitalized after showing fever symptoms. It said local authorities culled poultry in the vicinity, activated an emergency response and sterilized the area. Experts believe that infection is an occasional case and the risk of an invisible epidemic is extremely low. Now, 11 people have died and 70 are missing following flooding in western Germany. Record rainfall caused rivers to burst their banks, swept away homes and inundated cellars. Half a dozen houses have collapsed in the state of Rhineland-Palatinate. Local media quoted police as saying 25 more homes are at risk of collapse. 2 firemen drowned and the army was deployed to help stranded residents. Rail, road and river transport was disrupted, with shipping suspended on the Rhine River. The Weather Service has forecast heavy storms with continuous rains until Friday evening. Now in France, the Bastille Day celebrations wrapped up with a fireworks display in Paris. The day marks the end of the absolutism and the birth of a constitutional monarchy in France. Details in this report. The show took place around the iconic Eiffel Tower landmark, which was lit up in the colors of the French national flag during the display. Earlier in the day, thousands of military personnel paraded by foot on vehicles and aboard jets over Champs-Élysées Avenue.
It was the first time we came to Paris, and they thought it was the perfect time to show us what Paris is like, because there was the show, and we thought, wow, a show, we will get to see Paris lit up and all.
This year marked the return of the traditional military parade after last year's celebrations were replaced by a limited access event due to the COVID-19 crisis. It was the first time since the end of World War II that France had not held the military parade.
Je trouve que ça fait du bien à tout le monde.
I think it is good for everybody to maintain the fireworks show despite the COVID-19 situation. It allows people to get together. It is a well-known event and of nationwide importance that it gathers people together. I think it is really important and it perfectly ends this beautiful day.
French celebrations of national unity falls on the anniversary of the 1789 storming of the Bastille fortress in Paris, the turning point in the French Revolution. Now in Britain, the inventor of a jet suit that lets its wearer fly like Iron Man has unveiled his newest electric-powered suit. Let's find out about the suit in this report.
Richard Browning, founder of Gravity Industries, says switching from jet fuel to an electric-powered suit will push the limits of what is possible. He says the suit has enough power to run a number of houses.
Suit has enough power to run a small street of houses. It is phenomenal how much energy you need in a small form factor to get a human off the ground, and it really just brings home how much energy you have in gasoline or diesel or those fuels. So we're getting there. It'll only ever get better.
It has previously been tested by the paramedics in England's remote regions to get them to people in distress faster. The company has also demonstrated its suits to the Royal Marines to test how they can assist in maritime boarding operations.
Yeah, so military and search and rescue, they are new applications, but no, they're very real. We've done enough exercises with both of those groups now in a variety of countries to prove that there's actually a really powerful role for the equipment. So yeah, watch this space.
Gravity Industries was launched in March 2017, with founder Browning demonstrating his jet suit all over the world. The suit can hit speeds over 128 kilometers per hour and is capable of reaching an altitude of 12,000 feet.
Well, most European stocks are trading lower today. Investors digest inflation data from the US and the UK while looking ahead to more earnings and jobs data. Frankfurt's DAX and Italy's FTSE MIB have dipped over 0.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris and the Pan-European Stock 600 have slipped marginally as well. However, London's FTSE has managed to edge up above the flat line. Earlier, all Asian stocks traded mixed, with Japan's Nikkei 225 and Australia's ASX shedding. Now, China's GDP has expanded 12.7% year-on-year in the first half of 2021. Official data shows the GDP grew around 8% in the second quarter from the previous year. China's National Bureau of Statistics says the GDP expanded 1.3% on a quarterly basis. The NBS noted Beijing's exports and imports are likely to maintain relatively fast growth this year. However, it faces big pressure on employment. Meanwhile, China's industrial output also grew 8.3% in June from a year earlier, beating an 8% forecast. The United Arab Emirates says a final deal with OPEC Plus on its baseline level of oil production is yet to be reached. The clarification comes after reports that Riyadh and Abu Dhabi reached a compromise over crude output quotas. Brent oil prices fell on the news by as much as $1 per barrel. UAE Energy Minister Suhail Al-Mazroui said deliberations and consultations between parties concerned are ongoing. Talks between OPEC and its allies, led by Russia to boost oil production, were abandoned earlier this month. Most OPEC Plus members supported a proposal to unwind the remaining cuts every month until the end of the next year. The UAE refused to endorse it unless its individual production quota was raised.
Thank you. We are going to start with Abu Dhabi, where it is expected to get extremely hot, with temperatures rising to 44 degrees Celsius. While in Amsterdam, the temperature is around 22 degrees Celsius with some cloudy weather. If we head to Ankara, the weather is mostly sunny with temperatures at 34 degrees Celsius. Now moving down under to Auckland, the sun is out, but the temperature is chilly at 16 degrees Celsius. Now, if you are traveling to Bangkok, the thunderstorms will get in the way of your plans. Temperatures there will be around 31 degrees Celsius. While in Beijing, there are clouds in the forecast with temperatures at 31 degrees Celsius. Now in Beirut will experience some mostly sunny weather with temperatures at 31 degrees Celsius. Berliners will experience a bit of cloudy weather with temperatures at 25 degrees Celsius. Now heading to Cairo, the hot sun will be excruciating with temperatures at 37 degrees Celsius. Down in Canberra, the weather rain is going to be keeping things chilly at 15 degrees Celsius. In Islamabad, the sun is out with temperatures rising to 34 degrees Celsius. While in Jakarta, the temperatures are steady at 31 degrees Celsius with some partial sun. Thank you. That's all for now. Back to you.
Well, thanks, Naila, for the weather updates. And with that, we come to the end of this news bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.